Well, here we are again. We are, I think, week 4. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're on week 4 of Under the Hood. And I'm Chris. I'm the pastor here at Hope Community Church. And this is my wife, Beth. And your name's still the same.
It is.
And we just wanted to sit down with you. We've been going through the core values on Sunday morning. And so we've covered things like that's what we're covering this week, right. But we covered excellence, generosity, and unity. Then unity. And so now we're going to cover the topic of resourcefulness. And we're going to come at this a little bit different, like we have every week. We want to talk about specifically in the context of marriage. And so why don't you read Luke 12:48?
Sure. Everyone to whom much was given, of him much will be required. And from him to whom they entrusted much, they will demand the more.
It is really important to us here at Hope Community Church to be resourceful with finances and resources. We believe that God has entrusted it to us. It's not our money. Right. And that we bear responsibility to make it go as far as it can possibly go. I don't expect God to multiply it if I'm not willing to stretch it.
Right.
And so being frivolous with resources here is not something we like at all. And it's part of who we are personally. And so a couple things that we want to touch on as far as relationships and marriage and those type of things is never let money be the barrier that keeps you from doing things. Right. It's going to take some creativity. But there's a key thing. There's a little phrase that says necessity is the mother of invention. So as a couple, you're going to have to sit down and figure out what things are necessary in your life between the two of you. And I'm not talking about clothes and things like that. I'm talking about having time together, going on a date. Those things have to become necessities, or if there's not enough finances, you just kind of give up on them.
Right. But the thing with resourcefulness is a date doesn't mean you have to go out and spend $150 on dinner and a movie and flowers, whatever. So one of the things we used to do is just maybe pick things up at the store and fix those together. There have been times when maybe our kids were busy that we would take the opportunity and just go grill at the house and maybe fix. We both like to cook, so that's helpful. But we would just take things back to the house instead of maybe going out to a restaurant. Yeah,
you should figure you go to a decent restaurant in our area. You could spend $60, $70 on a nice meal, maybe $100 or more, and then you're gonna tip well because you go to church and all that stuff. But we found you can go to the grocery store and buy 2 good steaks and maybe get some seafood with it. I mean, have a really nice meal for a fraction of the cost. And there's nobody else around. It could be just the two of you at the house doing that. So coming up with creative ways to date each other on a budget.
Right. Have a movie night once the kids go to bed when they're little. I know that's always a tough time as well. So, have your kids have a bedtime, and at 9:00, 9:30, say, nope. This is our time. Let them know it's your date night.
Yeah.
So this is what we're going to do, and rent a movie or.
Yeah, the crazy part is it seems like the older we get or the longer we're together, we start making excuses about money. Like when we first started dating, neither of us had any money. We were in college, working part-time jobs, and a date would be going to Sheetz, to get drinks at Sheetz. Yeah. So you need to have the mentality that we're gonna take what we have and stretch it, and it's gonna be meaningful. And let me say this: it says a lot to your spouse when you're willing to figure out a workaround, put enough energy in it to figure out a workaround. Hopefully, both of you are on the same page as far as money. You know how much money you have,
right.
And if your spouse knows there's not enough money to go out and do something fancy or special that night, and you do a workaround, you figure out how to be resourceful with what you have in the moment and do something special. That is a giant thing. That means a lot. It means you put the time and energy into it to still do something meaningful, even though you didn't have a big budget for it. So there's a couple things. You have to learn how to try new things. It might not be the same go-to all the time. We're going to go to our favorite restaurant. Well, that might not be in the budget.
Right.
The other thing is some people, I'm not going to say who, some people are perfectionists.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea of it has to be perfect before we do it can also stop us from being resourceful.
Sometimes the fun part of that is it not being perfect. And so you're figuring it out as you go.
Yeah. I remember the first time we tried to make gravy together.
Yes.
It was inedible.
I mean, it took us 20 years to make gravy. I'll never forget it. I want to say it might have been even making sausage gravy one morning. We were like, we think we finally did it. And I'm not kidding you. I think it was 20 years.
Yeah, we cracked the code. But those are the things that make memories. You don't have to always, it doesn't have to be the perfect night all the time. And so sometimes that can be a roadblock to being resourceful because workarounds sometimes don't look perfect. Mm-hmm. But they're important to do, or you end up doing nothing. Mm-hmm. And that's not an option. So a couple tips that I want to give you. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be resourceful, you got to learn how to negotiate. America's the only country on the planet that doesn't negotiate at all. Nobody asked, that's what the sticker says, so we're just going to pay for it. If you want your money to go further, ask if there's a cheaper price. Ask if you can get a discount. It's not being cheap. I believe that's being resourceful.
Yeah.
Walking into a place and seeing if you can get it for a little less.
One of my most favorite stories was we have a friend that went into JCPenney's and they were having a buy one, get one half off sale on boots. And she said, but she had actually gone through the Dave Ramsey program. It was right after that. And she said, but I don't want to pair. And so she thought, Dave always says to ask, so let's ask. And so she did, and they were able to negotiate. Okay, well, you don't want to, then they were able to give her whatever certain percentage. They would have given her the same deal. Yeah.
So learn to negotiate. If you're going to be resourceful, you got to figure out how to stretch it a little bit. The other thing is we live in a do-it-yourself world now. You can, with YouTube and website, like Pinterest and things like that, you can figure out how to stretch a dollar and be resourceful. Yeah. And listen, this is not pointless resourcefulness because through our whole marriage, we wanted to be generous people. So we had a plan for our money. We wanted to be generous at certain amounts. And so that meant that there would be less money in certain occasions for other things. So we weren't going to let that stop us. We were going to say, okay, this is what we want to do with this money. We do want to be generous with it. So we don't have enough money to go to the movies every week or anything like that. So we're going to still figure out how to do something meaningful together. And I know every man listening to this is the next, I'll let you say it.
I was going to say, will those words even come out of your mouth?
I don't know.
Ask for help.
Yeah, ask for help.
I know Chris loves to help other people. So there are other people that would love to help Chris.
Yeah. So if you're going to be resourceful, it means figuring it out. And sometimes you got to ask. Sometimes you just got to call somebody and say, hey, I'm trying to pull this off. I'm trying to do this on limited budget. And I need some help doing it.
And sometimes it's not as hard, men, as asking for help. It's accepting the help. Because I think a lot of times you'll have people that say, give me a call when you're trying to change that or fix that or install that. Call them.
Yeah. Yeah, reach out.
Yeah.
So we just want to, there's one last thing I want to make sure that we talk about. One of the things that happens is, we first got married and for a long time, finances might be tight and we're trying to figure out how to do things, but we always try to figure out a workaround, always try to figure out how to be resourceful. I don't want to ever lose that mentality. To whom much is given, much is required.
Yeah.
And so what oftentimes happens is when you start to make a little more, start to have a little bit of excess, all of a sudden, you don't even think about workarounds anymore. You don't even think about trying to come up with something inventive or anything like, oh, well, we'll just go to the restaurant now because we can afford it. And my fear is those things become less meaningful because there wasn't any effort put into it.
Right.
So no matter how much money you make, I think we're called as Christians to be resourceful with that money. What's the best thing we could be doing with it now? And know this. Anything that you work on really hard for your spouse is way more meaningful than just paying for it. I can tell you that right now. And so never lose that ability to be resourceful. And I think you're going to come up look, you got a whole year this year to come up with some resourceful way to do things. And so, so give it a shot. It's part of who we are here at Hope Community Church, and it's part of who we are as people. So we love it, and I hope we encourage you to be more resourceful.